Jason's background, a normal beginning. Jason grew up in a typical middle-class family in a small town. He was an outgoing, intelligent, and athletic kid. Throughout high school, he was involved in sports, had many friends, and excelled academically. By all accounts, he had a bright future ahead of him. But like many teenagers, Jason was curious and easily influenced by his surroundings. During his junior year of high school, he started hanging out with a group of friends who were experimenting with drugs. It started small, occasional marijuana use at parties just to fit in and have fun. Jason believed it was harmless, like many teenagers do, and never imagined where it would lead, the downward spiral. As time went on, Jason's drug use became more frequent. What started as recreational marijuana use evolved into experimenting with more potent substances like prescription painkillers and eventually cocaine. By the time he turned 18, Jason's drug use was no longer just for fun. It had become a means of escape. He was dealing with academic pressure, relationship problems, and the stress of transitioning into adulthood. Drugs offered him temporary relief, a way to numb the pain and anxiety. But as Jason's addiction grew, so did the consequences. His grades began to slip, and he stopped participating in sports. He withdrew from his family and friends, becoming isolated and secretive. His parents noticed the changes, but they didn't realize the extent of the problem until it was almost too late. The turning point came one night when Jason overdosed on opioids. His friends panicked and called 911, saving his life. This near-death experience forced Jason to confront his addiction head-on, but it was also the moment his parents truly understood how severe his problem had become. Seeking help, the first steps. After the overdose, Jason's family intervened. His parents were devastated, but they knew that the only way to seek professional help. They found a local rehab service, and after much discussion and convincing, Jason agreed to enter treatment. The first days in rehab were tough. Jason went through the detoxification process, which was physically and emotionally exhausting. Withdrawal symptoms were intense. He experienced nausea, insomnia, anxiety, and severe mood swings. But Jason knew that getting through detox was the first critical step in his recovery. The medical staff and counselors provided constant support, helping him understand that while the physical pain would pass, the real work was just beginning. The rehab program Jason entered was comprehensive, involving individual therapy, group counseling, and educational workshops on addiction. Jason was introduced to the concept that addiction wasn't just about physical dependence, it was also a mental and emotional issue that needed to be addressed. He began to unpack the underlying causes of his addiction: stress, insecurity, peer pressure, and the need for validation. In therapy, Jason learned coping mechanisms that didn't involve drugs. He was taught how to recognize his triggers, the people, places, and emotions that tempted him to use substances. He practiced mindfulness and stress relief techniques like meditation and journaling, which allowed him to manage his emotions in a healthier way. Group therapy was also a significant part of Jason's recovery. Hearing the stories of others who had struggled with addiction made him feel less alone. He realized that addiction could happen to anyone, regardless of their background or upbringing. Jason formed bonds with others in recovery, and these connections became a source of strength and accountability. As Jason progressed through rehab, he began to rebuild his self-esteem. Addiction had taken away his sense of self-worth, but through therapy and hard work, he rediscovered who he was. He set new goals for his life, returning to school, repairing relationships with his family, and pursuing the passions he had abandoned when drugs took over. Facing challenges. The reality of relapse. Recovery, however, is never a straight path. After completing rehab and returning home, Jason faced the challenges of staying sober in the real world. Temptation was everywhere. Old friends still used drugs, and stressors from daily life hadn't disappeared. About 6 months into his recovery, Jason relapsed. He felt ashamed, disappointed, and angry at himself, but his family and support group reminded him that relapse was not a failure. It was part of the recovery process for many people. The key was to learn from the experience and get back on track. Jason returned to outpatient counseling, recommitted to his sobriety, and redoubled his efforts to avoid the people and situations that led him back to drugs. He learned to forgive himself and move forward, building a new life. Today, Jason is 19 years old and living a life he never thought was possible during the darkest days of his addiction. He's back in school, working part-time, and pursuing his passion for music. His relationships with his family have improved, and he's built new friendships with people who support his sobriety. Jason continues to attend group meetings and therapy sessions regularly. He knows that addiction is a lifelong battle and that staying sober requires constant effort, but he's committed to the journey. He's learned that asking for help is not a sign of weakness but of strength, and that recovery is possible, no matter how deep into addiction someone may be. A message of hope. Jason's story is one of hope and resilience. Addiction can feel like an overwhelming and never-ending battle, but recovery is always possible with the right support, determination, and professional help. If you or a loved one is struggling with addiction, take the first step toward recovery today. Call 1-888-240-0646 to speak with a rehabilitation service that can provide the support and care needed to overcome addiction. No matter how hopeless it feels, remember that change is possible. Jason was able to rebuild his life, and so can you. The importance of support. Jason couldn't have done this alone. His family's love, professional rehab services, and the friendships he made along the way all played vital roles in his recovery. If you're supporting someone through addiction, know that your role is crucial. Be patient, be understanding, and encourage them to seek professional help. Recovery is not a solitary journey. It takes a community, and with the right resources, anyone can overcome addiction and start living a healthy, fulfilling life. Remember, help is just a phone call away. Reach out to 1-888-240-0646 and take the first step toward healing today.